Princess Vela was going to die. Everyone in the imperial court knew it. They just did not say it out loud. The emperor called it a diplomatic mission. He said his third daughter would travel to Tessar 9, a small planet at the edge of known space. She would meet with traders and make new friends for the empire. It was an honor, he said, a chance for her to serve her people. But Vela was not stupid. She saw the truth in her father's cold eyes. She saw it in the thin smiles of her older sisters. She heard it in the whispers that stopped whenever she walked into a room. Her ship was old. Her crew was small. And the route to Tessar 9 passed through the Shattered Reach, a place where pirates killed travelers and no help ever came. Her father wanted her dead. Vela had made too many mistakes. She had spoken too freely about changing the old laws. She had smiled too kindly at the common people. She had grown too popular among those who had no power. And in the Kethrani Empire, a princess who loved the poor was dangerous. So her father sent her away to die in the dark between stars. On the morning of her departure, Vela stood in her chambers and looked at herself in the mirror. She wore simple traveling clothes instead of her usual robes. Her long silver hair was tied back. Her pale blue skin looked almost gray in the dim light. She was only 23 years old. She was not ready to die. A soft knock came at her door. A servant entered and bowed low. "Your Highness, your ship is ready." Vela nodded and followed the servant through the long hallways of the palace. She passed dozens of guards and officials. None of them met her eyes. None of them wished her a safe journey. They all knew where she was going. They all knew she would not return. The ship was called the Starward Grace. It was an old vessel, more rust than metal. Vela counted only 12 crew members waiting on the landing platform. For a diplomatic mission, this was a joke. Real diplomatic ships carried hundreds, but she said nothing. There was no point in complaining to people who wanted her dead. She was about to board when she noticed him. He stood at the back of the group, separate from the others. A human. He was shorter than the Kethrani around him, with brown skin and black hair cut very short. He wore the simple gray uniform of a slave, with a metal collar on his neck that marked him as property. Vela knew about humans. They were a young species from a small planet called Earth. They had no great technology, no powerful weapons, no special abilities. The Kethrani had found them a century ago and decided they were useful only as workers and servants. Many humans were captured and sold as slaves across the galaxy. This one looked thin and tired. His eyes were cast down, as was proper for a slave. But something about him seemed different. He stood very still, like a person saving his energy for something important. "Who is that?" Vela asked her escort. "A translator, Your Highness. His name is Taiho. He speaks 47 languages. He was purchased 3 years ago from a border world auction." Vela looked at the human for a moment longer. Then she turned away and boarded the ship. The journey began. For 2 days, nothing happened. Vela stayed in her small cabin and tried not to think about what was coming. The crew avoided her. They knew their mission was fake. They knew they were probably going to die too. Some of them were criminals given a choice between this voyage and prison. Others were soldiers who had angered powerful people. None of them wanted to be here. On the second night, Vela could not sleep. She left her cabin and walked through the empty corridors of the ship. Everything was quiet. The engines hummed softly. The lights were dim. She found herself in the ship's small observation room. A wide window showed the stars outside. Millions of tiny lights scattered across the blackness. She was not alone. The human, Taiho, sat in a corner with a small electronic tablet. He looked up when she entered, then quickly stood and bowed. "Your Highness, forgive me. I did not know you would come here." "Stay," Vela said. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. What are you doing? Learning, Your Highness. There is a planet we will pass tomorrow. I am studying its history. Vela turned to look at him. You study? I thought slaves were not allowed education. Something flickered in Taio's eyes. It was gone so fast that Vila almost missed it. I taught myself, Your Highness. On the ship that brought me to the auction. 3 years in a cargo container is a long time. I found old data files and learned what I could. Vela said nothing for a moment. She had never really spoken to a human before. She had seen them working in the palace, cleaning floors and carrying things. But she had never thought of them as people who might want to learn things. You are different from what I expected, she said finally. Taiho kept his eyes down. I am what my owners have made me, Your Highness. It was the correct answer. The safe answer. But Vela heard something underneath the words. She heard a person who was much more than he appeared to be. She turned back to the window. Do you know why we are on this ship? Yes, Your Highness. And you came anyway? I was not given a choice, Your Highness. Vela nodded slowly. Of course, he was a slave. Slaves did not choose. I am sorry, she said quietly. You will die because of me. Taiho was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was strange, calm, almost gentle. We are not dead yet, Your Highness. The attack came on the 3rd day. Vela was eating breakfast in her cabin when the ship shook violently. Alarms screamed. Red lights flashed. She heard explosions somewhere far away, felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. She ran into the corridor. Smoke filled the air. Crew members rushed past her, shouting in fear. Through a window, she saw another ship, huge and dark, firing weapons at them. Pirates. Just as everyone had expected. The Starboard Grace had no chance. It was old and weak. Within minutes, half the ship was gone, torn apart by enemy fire. Vela ran without knowing where to go. She heard screams and then terrible silence as parts of the ship lost air. She was going to die here, alone, in the dark. Hand grabbed her arm. This way. It was Taiho. His face was bloody from a cut on his forehead. His gray uniform was torn, but his eyes were sharp and focused. The escape pods, he said. Come. He pulled her through the chaos. Around them, the ship was dying. They passed bodies. They climbed over broken metal. Twice, Taiho pushed her down just before explosions tore through the walls above them. They reached the escape pods. Only one remained. Taiho pushed Vela inside and climbed in after her. His hands moved fast over the controls. Hold on. The pod launched. Through the tiny window, Vela saw the Starboard Grace break apart behind them. She saw the pirate ship turn toward them, then lose interest. They were too small to bother with. Not worth the ammunition. They tumbled into the void. Vela looked at the human beside her. Blood ran down his face. His breath came in short gasps. But he was alive. She was alive. Thank you, she whispered. Taiho did not answer. He was already looking at the pod's navigation screen, searching for somewhere to land. They were alone in the dark between stars. Their pod was small and had little fuel. They had emergency food for maybe a week. And no one was coming to rescue them. But they were not dead yet. And that, as Vela would learn, was all a human needed. Vela woke to the sound of rain. Her head hurt. Her body ached. She was lying on something hard and cold. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. Then everything came back. The attack. The explosions. The escape pod. She opened her eyes. She was inside a small metal room. Emergency lights glowed red above her. Rain drummed against the walls. Through a cracked window, she saw dark gray clouds and strange purple trees. They had crashed somewhere. You are awake. Vela turned her head. Taiho sat against the wall. His face was pale and tired, but he was alive. The cut on his forehead had been cleaned and covered with a bandage from the emergency kit. "Where are we?" Vela asked. Her voice came out rough and weak. "A moon. Orbiting a gas giant. I do not know its name. It is not on any map I have seen." Taiho stood up slowly. He moved like someone who was in pain but did not want to show it. "The air is breathable, barely. The water outside is clean. But I do not know what else is on this moon." Vela sat up. Her head spun. She felt sick and scared and very, very alone. "What do we do?" she asked. Taiho looked at her. His dark eyes were calm and steady. "We survive, Your Highness. That is what we do." The first day was hard. Vela had never done anything for herself in her entire life. She had servants to dress her, servants to feed her, servants to carry her things. She had never walked more than a few steps without someone holding her arm. She had never been hungry, never been cold, never been afraid. Now she was all of those things. Taiho gave her half of their emergency food. It was a small gray bar that tasted like nothing. Vela ate it in 3 bites and wanted more. "That is all for today," Taiho said. "We have enough for 6 days if we are careful. We need to find other food before it runs out." "Other food?" Vela looked at the purple forest outside. "What kind of food?" "I do not know yet. I will find out." He left the pod and disappeared into the trees. Vela sat alone, listening to the rain, wondering if he would come back. He did. 3 hours later, he returned with strange plants in his hands. Some were green. Some were red. Some looked like nothing Vela had ever seen. "We need to test them," Taiho said. "See which ones are safe." He showed her how. First, he touched a plant to his skin and waited. If nothing happened, he touched it to his lips and waited. Then he put a tiny piece in his mouth and waited. Only after all these tests would he try eating more. It was slow and dangerous work. Some plants made his skin turn red. Some made his lips swell. One made him vomit for an hour. Vela watched him suffer and felt shame burning in her chest. He was a slave. She was a princess. Yet he was the one doing all the work, taking all the risks. "Let me help," she said on the second day. Taiho looked at her with surprise. "Your Highness, you do not need to. I want to help." She stood up straight and tried to look brave. "Show me what to do?" Something changed in Taiho's eyes. It was small, just a tiny flicker. But Vela saw it. He looked at her like she was a real person for the first time. "Very well," he said. "First, you need to learn about the water." He taught her how to find clean water. He taught her how to build a fire using dry wood and rocks. He taught her which animals to avoid and which ones might be safe to eat. He taught her how to make a simple shelter from branches and leaves. Vela was terrible at all of it. Her first fire took 4 hours to start. Her first shelter fell apart in the wind. When she tried to catch a small animal for food, it bit her hand and ran away. But Taiho never laughed at her. He never complained. He just showed her again and again until she got it right. "Why are you so patient with me?" Vela asked one night. They sat around a small fire, eating roasted roots that tasted like dirt. "I am useless. I slow you down." Taiho poked the fire with a stick. His face was orange and gold in the light. "On my planet," he said slowly, "we have a belief. We say that a person becomes a person through other people. My humanity is connected to yours. If I abandon you, I lose part of myself." Vela did not understand. In the Kethrani Empire, everyone stood alone. The strong survived. The weak died. That was the natural order. "That sounds foolish," she said honestly. Taiho smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile. It changed his whole face. "Perhaps," he said, "but it is what I believe." The days turned into weeks. Vela learned. Her soft hands grew hard with calluses. Her pale skin darkened under the strange sun. She learned to walk silently through the forest, to read the signs of weather in the clouds, to sleep lightly and wake at the slightest sound. She also learned about Taiho. He had been born in a country called Korea on a planet called Earth. He had been a student, studying languages at a great school. He had been 20 years old when the slavers came. His village was small and had no weapons. The slavers took everyone young and healthy. They left the old and the sick behind. Taiho never saw his mother again. "Do you hate us?" Vela asked one day. They were walking through the forest, looking for food. "The Kathrani, I mean. For what we did to your people." Taiho was quiet for a long moment. "I try not to hate," he said finally. "Hate is heavy. It takes energy that I need for other things. But we enslaved you. We took everything from you. Yes." Taiho stepped over a fallen tree. "And hating you will not give it back. So I choose to move forward instead." Lila thought about this for days. She had been raised to see hate as strength. Her father hated his enemies and crushed them. Her sisters hated each other and fought for power. The empire was built on hate. But here was this human who had lost everything, and he refused to hate. Was that weakness or strength? Vela could not decide. On the 40th day, Vela got sick. It started with a fever. Then she could not keep food down. Then she became so weak that she could not stand. She lay in their small shelter, shaking and sweating, certain that she was going to die. Taiho never left her side. He gave her water, drop by drop. He kept the fire burning to keep her warm. He went out to find special plants that he thought might help her heal. He did not sleep for 3 days. On the 4th night, Vela's fever broke. She opened her eyes and saw Taiho sitting beside her, his face gray with exhaustion. "You are alive," he whispered. His voice was rough. "Thank the stars. You are alive." Vela looked at this human, this slave, who had fought so hard to keep her breathing. She looked at his tired eyes, his trembling hands, his thin body that had given everything for her. "Why?" she asked. Her throat was dry and her voice was weak. "Why did you save me? You could have let me die. You could have survived alone." Taiho took a deep breath. "I told you, Your Highness. My humanity is connected to yours. If you die, I lose part of myself." Vela reached out and took his hand. It was the first time she had ever touched him willingly. His skin was warm and rough. "My name is Vela," she said. "Not Your Highness. Just Vela." Taiho looked at their joined hands. Something moved across his face. Surprise. Then something softer. "Vela," he said quietly. "My name is Taiho. I know." She held his hand tighter. "Thank you, Taiho, for everything." He smiled that small smile again. "We are not done yet, Vela. We still have a long way to go." She smiled back. For the first time since the attack, she felt something like hope. "Then let us go together," she said, and they did. They had been on the moon for 3 months when the smuggler's ship landed. Vela and Taiho watched from behind the trees. The ship was old and ugly, covered in rust and strange markings. 5 aliens came out. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and too many eyes. They carried weapons and spoke in a language Vela did not know, but Taiho knew it. "They are Velkith," he whispered. "Criminals. They are here to hide stolen goods. Can they take us with them?" Vela asked. "Off this moon?" Taiho's face was serious. "Maybe, but the Velkith are not kind people. They might kill us, or sell us, or worse." Vela looked at the ship. It was their only chance. They had been stuck on this moon for too long. Their food was running low. Soon the cold season would come, and they would freeze. "We have to try," she said. Taeho nodded slowly. "Then we will try. But we must be careful." They approached the Velkith camp at dawn. Viola let Taeho do the talking. He spoke their language well, his voice calm and respectful. He told them that they were travelers whose ship had crashed. He offered to work for passage to the nearest space station. The Velkith leader looked at them with his many eyes. He saw a tired alien woman and a small human. Not threats. Not valuable. Just lost creatures begging for help. "We could use workers," the leader said. "The human looks strong enough. And the female. She might fetch a good price at the border markets." Vela's blood went cold. They meant to sell her. She looked at Taeho. His face showed nothing. But she saw his hands tighten into fists at his sides. "We accept," Taeho said calmly. "We will work for you." They boarded the ship. For 2 weeks, they worked like animals. They cleaned the cargo hold. They cooked food. They fixed broken machines. The Velkith treated them like dirt, kicking them when they moved too slowly, giving them scraps to eat. Vola wanted to scream. She was a princess of the Kethrani Empire. She had worn silk and eaten the finest foods. Now she was scrubbing floors and eating garbage. But she said nothing. She watched Taeho work without complaint, his face peaceful, his hands steady. He was waiting for something. She did not know what. On the 15th night, she found out. Vela woke to a hand over her mouth. It was Taeho. His eyes were bright in the darkness. "They are going to sell us tomorrow," he whispered. "We must leave now." He had planned everything. He had found the emergency shuttle. He had stolen food and water. He had learned the ship's security codes by watching the crew. They moved through the dark corridors like ghosts. Vela's heart pounded so hard she thought it would burst. Every shadow looked like an enemy. Every sound made her jump. They almost made it. They were 10 steps from the shuttle when the lights came on. 4 Velkiths stood in their path, weapons raised. "Going somewhere?" the leader asked. His many eyes gleamed with anger. Taeho pushed Vela behind him. His hands were empty. The Velkith had 4 guns pointed at his chest. "Run," he said to her quietly. "Get to the shuttle. I will hold them." "You cannot fight them," Vela whispered. "They will kill you." Taeho turned his head slightly. He was smiling. "Do you remember what I told you? About humans? We do not stop. We do not stay down, even when we should." And then he moved. Vela had never seen anything like it. Taeho was not big or strong. He had no weapons. But he moved like water, like wind, like something that could not be caught. He grabbed the first Velkith's gun and turned it on the second. He kicked the third in the knee and heard something crack. The fourth fired at him, but he was already gone, rolling across the floor, coming up behind his enemy Dot. The fight lasted maybe 30 seconds. When it was over, all 4 Velkith were on the ground. Some were screaming. Some were silent. Taeho stood over them, breathing hard, blood running from a cut on his arm. "The shuttle," he said. Now, they ran. The shuttle was small and fast. They left the smuggler's ship behind and jumped into fold space before anyone could follow. Vela sat in the co-pilot seat, her whole body shaking. "How?" she asked. "How did you do that?" Taeho was bandaging his arm with steady hands. "Humans learn to fight from a young age. My grandfather taught me. He said that a small person must be faster and smarter than a big person. That is the only way to survive." Vela shook her head. "The Kethrani think humans are weak, that you have no natural weapons." Taeho looked up at her. His eyes were dark and deep. "We do not need natural weapons," he said simply. We have our minds, our will, the ability to keep going when other species would quit. He tied off the bandage. My ancestors used to hunt animals by running after them until the animals died from exhaustion. Not faster, not stronger, just more stubborn. That is what humans are, Vela, the species that refuses to stop. Vela stared at him. She had grown up believing that the Kathrani were the greatest species in the galaxy. Strong, beautiful, powerful. Humans were nothing. Slaves, animals. But now she saw the truth. Humans were not weak. They were different. And that difference was something the Kathrani had never understood. The next 4 months were hard. They traveled from system to system, always running, always hiding. They worked on mining ships and freight carriers. They begged for food on space stations. They survived a hull breach that killed 12 others. Because Taiho kept the emergency systems running for 6 hours with broken equipment and pure stubbornness. Vela changed. The princes, who could not walk without help, now climbed through maintenance tunnels. The aristocrat who had never spoken to commoners now negotiated with traitors and criminals. The sheltered daughter, who had never made a decision, now made choices that meant life or death. And always, Taiho was beside her. He taught her to read people, to see lies in their eyes and truth in their hands. He taught her to fight dirty, to use her small size as an advantage. He taught her to never give up, even when everything seemed lost. You are not the same person who boarded the Starboard Grace, Taiho said one night. They were hiding in a cargo container, waiting for a ship to take them closer to Kathrani space. No, Vela agreed. I am better. You made me better. Taiho shook his head. I showed you what was already inside you. The strength was always there. You just needed to find it. Vela reached out and took his hand. It had become a habit between them. A connection. A promise. When we reach the Empire, she said, I will free you. I will use whatever power I have left to make sure you are never a slave again. Taiho squeezed her hand. I know. And then what? What will you do? He was quiet for a long moment. I do not know. I have been property for so long. I have forgotten what it feels like to choose my own path. Then choose now, Vela said. What do you want? Taiho looked at her. In the dim light, his eyes were soft. I want to see my planet again, he said quietly. I want to visit my mother's grave and tell her that I survived. And I want... He paused. I want to stay with you, if you will let me. Vela felt something warm spread through her chest. It was a feeling she had never known before. Something like happiness. Something like home. I will let you, she said. I will always let you. 2 weeks later, they finally found a ship heading to Kathrani space. They were going home, but as Vela watched the stars pass by, she knew that nothing would be the same. She was not the weak princess who had left, and she was bringing something dangerous back with her. She was bringing the truth about humans, and the Empire was not ready for it. The Imperial Palace of Kethros had not changed. Vela stood at the edge of the landing platform and looked up at the golden towers and crystal domes. Everything was exactly as she remembered. The same flags flying in the wind. The same guards standing at attention. The same beautiful garden stretching toward the horizon. 7 months ago, she had left this place as a princess going to her death. Now she was back, and nothing looked the same to her eyes. The palace was not beautiful anymore. It was a cage. A pretty prison where people smiled and plotted murder. Are you ready? Taiho asked beside her. Vela looked at him. He wore simple spacer clothing, patched and worn from their long journey. His slave collar was gone. She had removed it with her own hands on her last night in space. No, she said honestly. But we have come too far to stop now. They walked toward the palace. Word spread fast. Servants stopped and stared. Guards reached for their weapons, then hesitated. Who was this scarred stranger in rough clothing? Was it really the dead princess? Vela kept walking. She did not stop to explain. She did not wait for permission. She walked through doors that should have been locked, past guards who should have stopped her, down corridors she had walked 1,000 times before. The throne room was ahead. 2 massive doors stood in her path, carved from black stone and decorated with gold. Behind them, she could hear voices. The court was in session. Her father sat on his throne, ruling the empire, believing his troublesome daughter was dead. Vela pushed the doors open. The throne room was huge, big enough to hold 1,000 people. Today it held maybe 300. Nobles in silk robes, military commanders in polished armor, priests in white, officials in gray. All the power of the Kithrani Empire, gathered in one room. They all turned to look. Vela walked forward. Her boots made sharp sounds on the marble floor. Beside her, Taiho walked with his head high, not looking down like a slave should. He met the eyes of everyone who stared at him. The noise started as a whisper and grew to a roar. People pointed. People shouted. Some screamed. The dead princess was walking through their midst like a ghost. Emperor Kron rose from his throne. He looked older than Vela remembered. His silver hair had turned white. His strong face had new lines of worry and anger. His cold eyes were fixed on his daughter with shock and something else. Fear. What is the meaning of this? His voice thundered across the hall. Vela stopped at the proper distance. She knew the rules. She had learned them from birth. But she also knew the rules were only power, and power could be taken. Father, she said clearly. Her voice carried to every corner. I have returned. The throne room exploded with noise. People shouted questions. Guards moved closer, hands on weapons. The emperor raised his hand for silence, and slowly the room quieted. You died, Kron said. His voice was hard. Your ship was destroyed in the Shattered Reach. We held your funeral. We mourned you. You sent me to die, Vela replied. You gave me a broken ship and a skeleton crew. You knew the pirates would find us. You wanted them to find us. Gasps filled the room. No one spoke to the emperor this way. No one accused him of anything, certainly not in open court. Kron's face darkened with rage. How dare you? I dare because I survived. Vela took one step forward. I survived the attack on my ship. I survived 3 months on an unknown moon. I survived smugglers and pirates and the emptiness of space. And I survived because of him. She pointed at Taiho. Every eye in the room turned to the human. He stood straight and calm, showing no fear. He looked like what he was. A man who had walked through fire and come out the other side. A human? Someone in the crowd laughed. You were saved by a slave? More laughter followed. The nobles found it funny. A princess of the empire, rescued by the lowest form of life in the galaxy. Vela did not laugh. This man, she said, fought 4 armed Velkith with nothing but his bare hands. This man kept me alive when I did not know how to survive. This man gave me his food when we were starving. This man worked for 40 hours without sleep to save a dying space station. Her voice rose. This man is worth more than every person in this room. The laughter died. Kron descended from his throne, walking toward his daughter. Up close, Vela could see the anger burning in his eyes. He was not used to being challenged. He was not used to his children standing against him. You will order your slave to kneel, he said quietly. You will remember your place, and you will never speak to me this way again. He is not my slave, Vela said. She reached into her worn jacket and pulled out a small metal disc. It was very old, covered in ancient writing that most people had forgotten how to read. I invoked the right of elevation. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Emperor stopped moving. Vela had found the old law in her father's own library, years ago, when she was still a curious child who read too much. The right of elevation came from the early days of the Empire, when the Kethrani were weak and needed allies from any source. The law allowed any noble to raise a non-Kethrani to full citizenship if they had shown extraordinary service. The law had not been used in 800 years, but it had never been removed from the books. "You cannot," Kron whispered. "It is not permitted." "A human. The law makes no mention of species," Vela said. "I have read it many times. Any being who shows exceptional service to a member of the imperial family may be elevated. The service must be witnessed. The court must acknowledge." She turned to face the assembled nobles, the military commanders, the priests and officials. "I, Vela, third daughter of the imperial line, declare that this man, Taiho of Earth, has saved my life 17 times. I declare that he has shown courage, wisdom, and honor beyond any standard. I invoke my right to elevate him." The room was frozen. No one moved. No one breathed. Then, slowly, the whispers began. Vela heard them. Some were shocked. Some were angry. Some were curious. But all of them understood what she was doing. If Taiho was elevated, he would be a citizen of the Empire. He could not be owned. He could not be sold. He would have rights equal to any Kethrani noble. And more importantly, it would set a precedent. If one human could be elevated, others could follow. The whole system of slavery that the Empire was built on would begin to crack. Kron knew this. He looked at his daughter with pure hatred in his eyes. "I refuse," he said. "As Emperor, I refuse to witness this claim." Vela smiled. It was not a kind smile. "The law does not require your witness, Father. It requires the witness of the court." She spread her arms to include everyone in the room. "All of these people heard my claim. All of them are witnesses." Kron's hands tightened into fists. He was trapped. If he denied the law, he would show that the Empire's laws meant nothing. The traditionalist nobles would turn against him. The military would question his authority. But if he accepted, "Think carefully," he said quietly. "Think about what you are destroying." Vela met his eyes. "I am not destroying anything, Father. I am building something new. Something better. Something that will survive long after your empire of slaves has turned to dust." She turned her back on the Emperor and faced the court. "I invoke the right of elevation. Does anyone here deny my claim?" Silence. No one spoke. No one dared. The law was clear, and the princess had followed it exactly. Vela nodded slowly. "Then it is done." She turned to Taiho and held out her hand. "Welcome to the Empire, citizen." Taiho took her hand. His grip was warm and strong. And in that moment, surrounded by enemies, standing in the heart of power that wanted them both dead, they had won. But Vela knew this was only the beginning. The real battle was still to come. The throne room did not move. 300 of the most powerful people in the Kethrani Empire stood like statues. They stared at the scarred princess and the human beside her. They stared at their emperor, whose face was white with rage. They waited to see what would happen next. La knew she had to act fast. She had won the first battle, but her father was not finished. She could see him thinking, planning, looking for a way to destroy her without breaking the law. She needed to do more than just elevate Taiho. She needed to change everything. "People of the court," she said loudly. "For 7 months, I traveled across this galaxy. I saw things that most of you will never see. I met species that you consider beneath you. And I learned a truth that the Empire has forgotten." She paused, letting her words settle. We are not as powerful as we think." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some nobles looked offended. Some looked curious. A few looked afraid. "Our empire is old," Vela continued. "We have ruled for thousands of years. We have grown comfortable. We have stopped growing, stopped changing, stopped learning. And we have made enemies that we do not even know about." She pointed at Taiho. "This man's species is young. They have been in space for only 2 centuries. They have no great fleets, no powerful weapons, no ancient traditions. By our standards, they are nothing." The crowd nodded. This was what they believed. "And yet," Vela said, "when my ship was destroyed and I was left to die, it was not a Kathrani who saved me. When I faced pirates and smugglers and death itself, it was not a Kathrani who stood beside me. It was this human, this slave, this nothing." She walked slowly through the crowd. People stepped back to let her pass. "Do you know how humans hunt?" she asked. "They do not use claws or teeth or strength. They run after their prey until the prey falls down from exhaustion. Not faster, not stronger, just more stubborn. They refuse to stop." She stopped in front of a tall noble lord. He looked down at her with disgust. "You think you are better than them," Vela said. "You think your power makes you strong. But power is nothing without will. And humans have more will than any species I have ever seen." She walked on, moving through the silent crowd. When this man was captured and enslaved, he did not break. He taught himself 47 languages in a cargo container. When our ship was attacked, he did not run. He grabbed me and found the only escape pod. When we were trapped on that moon, he did not complain. He built shelter, found food, kept me alive when I did not know how to survive. She stopped in the center of the room, surrounded by enemies. And when I asked him why he did all this, do you know what he said? He said that his humanity was connected to mine, that if he let me die, he would lose part of himself. Vela turned to face her father on his throne. "That is something this empire has forgotten. We have forgotten that we are connected to each other. We have built our power on the bodies of slaves, on the suffering of those we consider beneath us. And one day, that will destroy us." Kron stood up slowly. His voice was cold as ice. "You speak of destruction," he said. "You speak of change, but you do not understand what holds this empire together. Fear, power, control. These are the things that keep order. Without them, there is only chaos." "No," Vela said. "There is something else. Something stronger than fear." "And what is that?" Vela smiled. "Hope." She gestured to Taiho. "Come here. Speak to them." Taiho walked forward. Every guard in the room tensed. Hands went to weapons. But no one moved to stop him. He stopped beside Vela and looked out at the assembled court. His face was calm and peaceful. "I am Taiho," he said. His Kathrani was perfect, without accent or hesitation. "I was born on a planet called Earth. I was a student once. I wanted to study languages and travel the galaxy. Then slavers came to my village. They took everyone who could work. They left the old and the sick to die." His voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the room. "I spent 3 years in a cargo container, waiting to be sold. I was bought by a minor official and sent to work on this ship. I expected to die as a slave, forgotten and alone." He paused. "Then I met Vela, and everything changed." He looked at the princess beside him. "She was kind to me, not because she wanted something, not because she needed to be, just because she saw me as a person. That was the first time anyone in your empire had treated me as anything more than property." He turned back to the crowd. "When the ship was attacked, I had a choice. I could have let her die. I could have saved myself. No one would have blamed me. She was just another Kethrani who saw my people as animals. His eyes moved across the room, meeting the gazes of nobles and warriors and priests. But I chose to save her, because where I come from, that is what we do. We help each other. We do not leave people behind. We believe that all life has value, even the lives of those who do not value us. He took a breath. I am not here to threaten your empire. I am not here to demand revenge for what was done to my people. I am here because Vela asked me to come. Because I believe that things can change. Because I have seen the best of your species, and I know that the worst does not have to win. He bowed his head slightly. My people are patient. We are forgiving. We do not seek war or conquest. But we also do not forget. And we do not stay down. The throne room was absolutely silent. Vela stepped forward. The rite of elevation is witnessed, she said. Tyho of Earth is now a citizen of the Kethrani Empire, with all the rights and protections that brings. Does anyone here challenge this? No one spoke. Does the Emperor acknowledge the law? Kron sat on his throne. His face was a mask of stone. But Vela saw his hands gripping the armrests so tight that his knuckles were white. He was trapped. The law was clear. The witnesses were many. If he refused now, he would break the foundation of everything he had built. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. The rite of elevation is acknowledged. Vela felt relief wash through her body, but she did not let it show. There would be time for that later. Now, she needed to finish what she had started. Good, she said. Then there is one more thing. She walked toward the throne, climbing the steps until she stood face to face with her father. I am not the same daughter you sent away to die, she said quietly, so only he could hear. I have seen things. I have learned things. And I will not let you destroy this empire with your fear and your hate. Kron's eyes burned with anger. You are nothing. A child playing at politics, perhaps. Vela smiled. But this child just changed your empire in front of every powerful person in it. And that is only the beginning. She turned and walked back down the steps. Tyho was waiting for her at the bottom. He held out his hand, and she took it. Together, they walked out of the throne room. Behind them, the court slowly came back to life. Whispers became murmurs, became shouts. Some people were angry. Some were afraid. Some were hopeful. The galaxy had changed today. A human had stood before the mightiest court in the empire and spoken as an equal. A princess had challenged her father and won. A law forgotten for 800 years had been remembered. It was not the end of slavery. It was not the end of prejudice. It was not the end of the old ways. But it was a beginning. Outside the palace, Vela and Tyho stood in the garden where she had played as a child. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. What now? Tyho asked. Vela looked at the sky. Now we fight. My father will not accept this. He will try to destroy us. But we have allies now. People who saw what happened. People who will spread the story. She turned to look at him. The story of a human who would not stop. Who saved a princess and changed an empire. That story is a weapon, Tyho, and we are going to use it. Tyho nodded slowly. Then I will stay by your side. For as long as you need me. Vela smiled. Good, because I will need you for a very long time. She took his hand again, and together they walked into the future. The court had fallen silent today. But the silence would not last. Tomorrow, the galaxy would start to change, and it had all begun with one human who refused to give up.